Chapter 8 of The Master Mystery. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Master Mystery by John W. Gray and Arthur B. Reeve. Chapter 8. Brent Rock was brilliantly lighted against Locke's coming. At the foot of the great stairway a group of excited servants had gathered, as if for mutual protection. "Not another day will I stay in this house," quavered the cook. "What with crazy laughing and the other carryings on, I'm fair distracted." "Take shame to yourself, Mary Dolan, for your gab a-quittin', with the master and Miss Eva in sore trouble," answered the second girl. "But as you say," she continued, shaking her head, "it's a gloomy old place, and if it wasn't for Miss Eva I'd not be long in going myself." "Have you no loyalty?" asked the butler, turning on them both. "Hold your jaw, Johnny Bull," threatened the cook. "Indade no foreigner can tell Mary Dolan her duty." So they wrangled back and forth, and the underlying cause of all the discord was the old one, fear. Nor was Eva exempt from its baneful influence. She was here, there, everywhere, allaying one servant's apprehension, commanding another to perform some task in order to occupy that servant's mind, but for herself she knew that the strain would not lessen until Locke arrived. She ran upstairs and to a window from which she could obtain a better view of the drive along which he must come. In a very short time, which nevertheless seemed an age to her, Eva was rewarded, and she fairly flew down the stairs, out of the house, and far down the drive. Locke's taxi stopped. He leaped out, and regardless of the chauffeur, took Eva's hand. "Tell me quickly what has happened?" he inquired. From a distance Dora was a witness, exulting. "Paul stands a swell chance with her," she sneered. "Oh, I'm so glad you're here," confided Eva, letting down just a bit of her restraint as, like a frightened child, she told of what she had learned about the disappearance of Flint. Locke dismissed the driver, and together they walked slowly toward the house. Not only Eva, but the entire household was relieved by Locke's presence. The cook rushed forward and with a "God bless you, sir," would have embraced him had he not stepped aside. Even the dignified old family butler tried to take his hand, an unheard-of liberty on his part. For unknowingly all had come suddenly to rely upon this quiet, unassuming young man. Locke immediately asked to be shown to Flint's room in the hope that Flint might have left some clue behind. But although they searched high and low, no success met their efforts. It was then that they faced their darkest moment. Feeling as they did that they were encircled by hidden enemies, the very air they breathed became a menace. Every attempt to find the thread that might unravel the dark mystery proved fatal. It was not to be wondered at that they despaired. Even the weird laughter of Eva's stricken father, echoing hollowly through the house, seemed to be mocking their efforts. The Automaton's emissaries were anxious to do their job and return to the cave, for, like rats, they preferred the security best found underground. They did not lead Flint very far. At the edge of the Brent estate there was an Italian marble fountain decorated with bronze dolphins and water nymphs disporting themselves. It was at this fountain that the men halted Flint and, with a final warning, left him. For a few moments, such was his fear, Flint did not remove the bandage from his eyes, but moved groping around until his hand came in contact with the edge of the fountain. For a moment he stood quietly, listening for sounds of the emissaries. Then, as he heard nothing, he tore the bandage from his eyes, gazed wonderingly around him until his mind grasped his exact location, then, with a bound, started to run toward Brent Rock. Had he noticed the bestial face of an emissary peering from the shrubbery, he would have been even more frightened. Retribution, he would have known, would be swift and sure had he disregarded their commands and moved in another direction. As Flint left the fountain, Balcom, suave and well-groomed as usual, was just giving his hat and stick to the butler when Locke and Eva, returning from Flint's room, encountered him in the hallway. "Oh, Mr. Balcom!" exclaimed Eva. "Mr. Locke and I are at a loss to account for Mr. Flint's disappearance. I told the gardeners, and they have hunted for him all over the estate and beyond, but he has disappeared as completely as though the ground had swallowed him." Balcom expressed his utmost astonishment and at once insisted on going to Flint's room to solve the mystery himself. Eva and Locke went directly into the library, where Locke for the first time had an opportunity to tell Eva the result of his visit to the chemist. The fact that they had discovered the nature of the toxin was in itself encouraging, and Eva felt that, even now, she could see the glimmer of a silver lining to the clouds. "If we can only locate Mr. Flint, Quentin," she murmured, "I feel that much would be explained." Hardly had the words passed her lips when, breathless and disheveled, Flint staggered up the stairs from under the porte cochere and into the hallway. Balcom, just descending from his brief inspection of Flint's room, hailed him. "What has happened?" he demanded. "Don't go into the library." "I've just escaped from the Automaton," shouted Flint, "and I've found the antidote." Before Balcom could stop him, he rushed into the library, Balcom following in a towering rage. Eva gave a startled little cry at the wild intrusion, and Locke moved closer to her. "Is the antidote that will restore your father's reason worth $10,000 to you?" demanded Flint. Then, before Eva could reply, added, "Speak quick. I've got to get out of the country tonight." "$10,000!" gasped Eva. "10 times 10,000. Tell me what it is." "Show me the money first," haggled Flint. "And remember, I must have the hard cash." "Just a moment, Eva," interrupted Locke. "Consider this thing well. We can deal with this fellow as a final resort." Eva looked from Locke to Balcom, her mind in a turmoil, as the telephone bell rang and Locke hurried to answer it. In the room now there was a conflict of emotions and desires that fairly electrified the place. Eva ardently craved her father's recovery at all costs. Flint's avaricious mind wavered between a scheme nearing success and the possibility of failure and the fear of the Automaton. Balcom strained to hear the purport of the message that Locke was receiving. At the sound of the chemist's voice, Locke was tense with suppressed excitement. "I've found the antidote," hastened to report the professor. With a cordial word of thanks, Locke turned from the telephone and faced the group in the room. As he made the announcement, Eva almost embraced him in the flood of relief at the thought of her father restored. "Eva," growled Balcom, "you forget yourself. As Paul's father, I cannot countenance such actions." "Mr. Balcom," interrupted Locke, "I am sure you will be kind in your criticism of Miss Brent. She has merely overrated my services to her." "Paul shall hear of this," stormed Balcom. "If your son cares to take the matter up with me," returned Locke, now on his dignity, "I am always to be found here." "Never mind," interposed Flint, who feared to see his chance slipping. "I've got to get out of the country. Mr. Locke, your antidote is probably valueless. Mine is the certain one. Look at me, Miss Brent. Am I not cured?" "You miserable sneak," scowled Locke, stepping over to him. "We don't need your assistance now." "I'm dealing with Miss Brent," insisted Flint insolently. Eva, a bit nervous over Balcom's overbearing manner, interposed. "Mr. Locke," she said, with just a touch of dignity for effect on Balcom, "this is a matter of life and death, and I am not in